For the past several decades, a new form of competition in athleticism has emerged in the media. Although, this isn't something you'll need to leave the house for. Electronic sports, or eSports for short, are a select group of highly competitive video games that are played at big championships and broadcast around the globe. Dedicated players train for hours perfecting their reflexes and taking notes. One esport might have you in teams, working to outplay and dissect your opponent. Others, on a two-dimensional stage, allowing them to punch, kick, and combo one another.
Ledge Castle turned around grab! West Boss is absolutely going off right now! Stop, West Boss, calm down! Oh, the shine over!
Anyone can play, but only few can become masters.
As with many conventional sports, players are often picked up and sponsored by teams and organizations. In order to stay happy and healthy, many players that have signed with teams are accommodated via housing, transportation, and equipment. The player benefits and added stability allow players to practice full-time and give the fans high-quality results. Players that place highly even get money, so much so that on top of a team salary, they typically live very comfortably and even lavishly. These opportunities allow players to blossom and reach a new level where they can attract an audience of millions, all while playing video games.
This is Andy Leonard at the 1980 Atari Games. Lots of excitement here. Stiff competition in basketball. They have the jump on Skydiver. The human cannonball can't miss.
Esports can be traced back to November 1980, when Atari held the world's first ever large-scale video game tournament, the National Space Invaders Championship. At over 10,000 participants, this was the first definitive example of video games transitioning from a geeky subculture into a mainstream hobby.
And for the first time, Space Invaders.
However, the strength of the scene was only as popular as the games played. Luckily, Space Invaders was hugely popular, receiving the status of Game of the Year by multiple news outlets. Eddie Adlam of Replay magazine was quoted saying, "Space Invaders was to this industry what the Beatles were to music." Speaking of music, the video game boom that had occurred would eventually lead to countless references in pop culture and mainstream media.
All right, it's Saturday night. I have no date, a 2-liter bottle of Shasta, and my all-rush mixtape. Let's rock.
Atari would inadvertently inspire future tournaments and generations of competitors to come.
Fast forward to the 1989 cult classic, The Wizard. The film was immensely popular with its young demographic, depicting a group of kids that travel across the country to compete in national video game competitions. Shortly following its release, the video game pioneer Nintendo announced a real-life competition, one that looked and felt nearly identical to the one in the movie. After touring across 29 cities, the first ever Nintendo World Championship was held at Universal Studios in March of 1990.
The Nintendo Power Fest upon Dallas, Texas. An incredible moment at that. Traveling coast to coast across the country, from Seattle to Miami, New York to Los Angeles, searching for the best in the business, the top guns of Nintendo.
Thousands of people competed to get the highest scores in Super Mario Bros., Rad Racer, and Tetris. Prizes include $10,000 in cash for the winner, as well as a convertible and a television. Children from California to Maine saw The Wizard and wanted a piece of the action. However, many went home disappointed to find they weren't as good as they once thought.
So, I was at a Smash Bros. Tournament in New York, and I thought I was pretty good at the game before. But I sat down to play a match with some random bearded man. I got demolished. I felt like I couldn't do anything. Like he knew exactly what I was going to do the entire time. Someone came up to me soon after the game and told me that I just played a match against the person who's considered the greatest of all time at Melee. Mango.
The Nintendo World Championships set the tone for companies and the idea of strategic marketing to advertise major video game tournaments. This was truly the first event to have laid down the groundwork for esports to be built upon.
The late 90s saw a massive wave in the general interest of esports. Computers were becoming more common, and the convenience of multiplayer games were expanding. Instead of having a group of people individually competing for the high score, players can now directly compete with each other through a local area network, or LAN for short. Elimination brackets naturally took over the scene, being the most effective and widely accepted method of determining a winner. Whether it be a simple one-on-one battle or 5-man teams duking it out on a virtual battlefield, the esports community saw an important change, one that would mark the beginning of a worldwide phenomenon. Quake was one of the first games to have recognizably skilled players, many of which had their first glimpse of the limelight at Red Annihilation, one of the first national esports competitions. Players had to qualify for the top 16 spots out of around 2,000 participants by playing online. Those who made it were flown out to the World Congress Center to compete in person. But if the game allowed for online play, why did the players travel all that way?
Well, LAN games are usually preferred because it's a way to combat against people who try to cheat in game. And also, it gets rid of all the lag because you're not playing online.
The 90s also saw the outbreak of team esports. A few passionate game developers, Min Gooseman Le and Jess Cliff, set out to release a strategic, team-based shooter running off a modified version of Valve's Half-Life game engine. Players took on the role of members of combating teams, one a government-based counter-terrorist unit, the other a villainous terrorist squad looking to wreak havoc in one of several locations and situations. Released in 1999, Counter-Strike was met with critical acclaim and left a strong impression on the team over at Valve. So much so that the corporation reached out and hired Gooseman and Cliff, acquiring the rights for the game. Valve re-released Counter-Strike for Microsoft Windows the following year, seeing sequels and patches for years to come. However, first-person shooters aren't the only genre of competitive gaming on the rise. The real-time strategy genre of games was popularized in 1998 with the release of Blizzard Entertainment's own StarCraft. Sticking with the trend of popularizing modifications, Blizzard sought out to develop a more competitive-focused game. The project started in 1995 and used their very own Warcraft 2 game engine as a foundation. The game was widely popular and is commonly credited for establishing South Korea's successful esports scene. In StarCraft, players choose from one of 3 races, utilizing real-time strategy and resource management as they deploy units to face off against their opponent.
It was around this time that esports reached a new level of exposure. Televised events were most notably established in South Korea, airing StarCraft and Warcraft 3 on dedicated gaming networks, on GameNet and NBC Game. The demand, however, was not quite there. The latter half of the 2000s saw a myriad of broadcasts and networks come and go. Nobody was quite sold on the idea of televising esports. Who would want to watch a bunch of sweaty nerds sit around and play video games when football, a real manly sport, was just the click of a remote away? This drought in general interest brought a drop in viewership and prize money. The community would need a miracle, something to bring interest in the competitive scene to the average Joe Schmo.
But if television networks weren't broadcasting, who would? The live streaming website Justin.tv launched in 2007. Originally designed for co-creator Justin Can to broadcast his life 24 hours, 7 days a week, the site was relaunched to allow anyone to live stream and watch channels for free. For most gamers, this was a perfect outlet to watch and relay their personal gaming experience to whomever would watch. Gaming wasn't the only thing people streamed on Justin.tv, however, it was by far the most popular. Even categories such as music and sports were overshadowed. It became so dominant, the company wanted to produce a new website dedicated to gaming. So in June of 2011, Twitch.tv went live. In 3 years' time, the video game broadcasting service grew to a value of $97 million, the amount Amazon.com paid to acquire it in 2014. To this day, Twitch continues to reach over 100 million viewers per month. Websites such as these helped grow the industry when TV networks would not. Many people, however, feel that the video games are not a sport.
I'm laughing because I can't think of anything less interesting.
But my issue is it's still not a sport.
Well,
it's a game.
Like certain games garner respect, like chess. If you
yeah.
were a really good chess player, like, oh, he's a sophisticated gentleman.
Crazy Danish
He's a
people.
chess player.
Yeah.
What do you do for a living? I play chess. Whoa, interesting. What do you do for a living? Oh, I play video games. Oh, you
Say
dork.
Critics point out that you don't even go outside, and esports are too easy to be compared to real sports.
I think if people gave esports more of a chance, took the time to really understand what's going on, it's not just playing video games. It requires a lot of skill, as well as mental and physical focus.
They are digital athletes. They're professional digital athletes. When you think about, look, I think about what it took for me to become a professional athlete. It took a lot of concentration, a lot of dedication, practice, preparation, stamina. And the more I watched my son pursue this career, and the more I watched him introduce me to the world as it is, which is professional gaming. They're sponsored. They have careers. They make hundreds of thousands of dollars.
While even the largest esports events pale in comparison to, say, the Super Bowl, analysis shows the revenue is likely to more than double by the year 2018. The 2015 League of Legends Championship reached a peak of 14 million viewers, over double that of the 2011 British Royal Wedding. 2015 also saw the distribution of over $70 million in tournament prizes, nearly double that of the year prior.
In the next 5 years, I can see esports becoming much more widely broadcasted on national television and much more accepted in the general public as a legitimate sport.
Numbers continue to rise and show great promise for the future of esports. Games like Dota 2 and Counter-Strike Global Offensive bring in a constant viewership almost every day. Because there are no off-seasons, events are much more frequent. The biggest competitions usually happen 2 or 3 times a year, instead of just one definitive season. With the path we're currently heading down, the industry shows a very promising future.